welcome to one and all. This is episode 170 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Sunday afternoon here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, enjoy it. Haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you check out this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. So episode 170 will be the 15th entry in our ongoing series, which I haven't done in the last couple of weeks, Most Underrated Film Performances. And I'm going to go with one of my favorites, my actually single favorite person to ever work in the movie business for my 15th Most Underrated Film Performance. The star is Clint Eastwood. The role and film is Secret Service agent Frank Horrigan in the classic 1993 action thriller In the Line of Fire. Now, in the pre-internet era, it was still possible, even though I know for you youngins it was the Stone Ages, and we're talking about something that's almost 31 years ago now, just to give you an idea, because Clint was 63 when this movie opened. He was 62 when it was shot. He's now 93. He's going to be 94 in 4 weeks. So he was already old. Now, Clint, to be fair, he did get widespread acclaim for his performance here. But I feel like he didn't get enough because he's a movie star. And in a similar vein, although Cary Grant had way more range than Clint Eastwood, we can agree on that. But in a similar range that Cary Grant was so good at doing Cary Grant and being Cary Grant, that when he knocked performances out of the park, as he did in North by Northwest, as he did 4 years later in Stanley Donen's Charade, when he did that, they said, he's just doing Cary Grant. Now, in the terms of Clint, because Clint got Oscars aplenty, he won Best Picture and Best Director for Unforgiven. He won Best Picture and Best Director for $1 Million Baby. I know this is a cliche. He wasn't really taken seriously as an actor until his incredible comeback with Unforgiven. Now, there are those who would say, if you look at the career of Clint Eastwood, that his performance as William Money is his finest bit of screen acting. Now, I would say his monologue about it's a hell of a thing killing a man. When Clint passes, that's the scene that we're gonna watch over and over again on social media. That's the scene. But for my money, no pun intended, Clint's finest film acting is In the Line of Fire, because he dares to craft a three-dimensional, living, breathing relic character when he didn't have to. He wasn't involved in the production. This was one where he was a hired gun, and he only got In the Line of Fire because Warner Brothers began buzzing about Unforgiven months before it was to be released in August. The Warner Brothers head honchos, the same guys that nearly fucked up Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas a little over a year earlier, those same executives watched Clint Eastwood's, it wasn't really a rough cut, it was basically the finished film, in February of 1992, and everyone in the room saw not only dollar signs, but Oscars. Now, so often that ends up being wrong, because in 1990, as the same Warner execs, probably 80 to 90% of the same people were trashing Goodfellas, they saw the dollar signs and the Oscars from Brian De Palma, Marty's old buddy, and Bonfire of the Vanities. They got that completely backwards. But in the case of Unforgiven, they ended up being right. And the buzz was still something that people listened to in Hollywood. And when it was reported in the Hollywood Reporter, in Daily Variety, believe it or not, Clint Eastwood is about to make a comeback that nobody is expecting. It's going to happen. They were right on the button. Because of those whispers, Clint got In the Line of Fire at a time where the studio famously had said, we're not in the Clint Eastwood business anymore. They wanted to go with a younger actor. They tried Dustin Hoffman, he passed, but Dustin gave them the idea of the Kennedy angle, which did not exist in Jeff McGuire's original screenplay. So that's how Clint got the part in the first place. His career had been at a low ebb. He had a number of movies that tanked, And even good movies like White Hunter, Black Heart didn't really make that much of an impression, although it made plenty of 10 best lists. Nobody saw it. And then The Rookie with Charlie Sheen bombed. And then Unforgiven, the resurrection of Clint Eastwood. And so when he got in The Line of Fire, he could have coasted because it was such a terrific role. If he just plays it in standard action hero mode, the movie still works. But he doesn't give a movie star performance. He gives certainly it's the broadest film acting that he ever did, even including Bridges of Madison County, where he holds his own with Meryl Streep. But oddly enough, that character, although very emotional and kind of not a typical Clint character, he's blubbering like a baby at the idea that he may never see Meryl again. Woe is me. I mean, listen, Meryl's great, but come on. That was a little bit of an anti-Clint role, but his performance in The Line of Fire is incredible. And it shows that maybe he just hadn't really been tested earlier in his career, that he always had it in him to do this. And really the closest that he came, Dirty Harry's a great performance, but it's more on the line of a great movie star crushing a role. There isn't that much interior with this character of Harry Callahan. We get enough, but it's a very tight, focused performance. In The Line of Fire, Clint shows us a still very potent, very resourceful, terrific Secret Service agent. Fearless, even. This is not just some random guy who happened to get this job. This guy has got a pot full of guts. He is absolutely a man of honor, man of integrity, man of principle, and somebody willing to put his life on the line for his country. As much as that's a cliche, it's what he signed up for, and in the world of the movie, it's what we see. Clint brings his entire, at that point, 30 years a star. All of the baggage, not in a negative way, but all of the baggage of the first 3 decades of his career, he carries with him into this role. We feel every beat, every line on his face, and he's just amazing the whole way through. He doesn't take any scenes off. He fights and scratches and claws his way, sometimes metaphorically, sometimes almost literally, through the film. Now, for those who have not seen this, I'm envious of you. When people ask me to name what are your favorite thrillers, what do you think are the best action thrillers? In The Line of Fire is in the top 10. And it's strange how this works, because the mechanics of Netflix and what is on what channel at what time, I don't understand any of it. I know that In the Line of Fire, at various points, it was on Netflix for like 18 months out of a 2-year stretch. It was on what was HBO Max and now Max. It was on Max for quite some time, as was Dirty Harry, but the Tubi app, you can watch In the Line of Fire for free. That is a free app. I shouldn't do the quotes. I always do the air quotes, thanks to Austin Powers. Lasers. Death Star. In the Line of Fire it was marketed as a political thriller, but it's not really. It doesn't get into politics. It's a political thriller because the main character at certain points is on presidential detail. But we don't get into any mechanics of politics. So when I think political thriller, I think of the movie like The Parallax View or 3 Days of the Condor, one with Warren Beatty, one with Robert Redford. But that's neither here nor there. The basic setup, and it's so simple and elegant and brutally effective, is that Frank Horrigan, Clint Eastwood's protagonist, was John F. Kennedy's favorite agent. Obviously, this isn't true, but this is the kind of movie that blends reality with the make-believe, like Titanic, like a lot of period pieces where you have fake characters discussing real people. Hell, the original Rocky. Joe Frazier is in the movie somehow. I don't know how he's in the movie, but Joe Frazier's in the movie, so it's a slightly altered reality, but Joe Frazier is a former heavyweight champion of the world in the world of the film, and in real life, at that time, he was a former heavyweight champion of the world. So Frank Horrigan is JFK's favorite agent. And what we learn early on in the film is on that fateful day in Dallas, Frank Horrigan was riding, in the open motorcade, not a great idea, and he was the closest to Kennedy And when the first shot went off, he froze. He didn't do what he had been trained to do, which, as crazy as it sounds, you can watch the horrendous footage of John Hinckley Jr. attempting to ambush and kill Ronald Reagan, the Secret Service agents. You got some guys who are looking for the shooter to try to take the bullet. They are literally going like this, and then other guys jumping on top of the president to protect him. Frank's duty that day, when he heard the shot, was to jump towards the president. Take the shot. Again, taking a guess, because who the fuck knows where the first shot's coming from. You got half a second. He froze. Kennedy took a fatal bullet. And the young, idealistic Secret Service agent has not had the last 30 years that he otherwise might have had. And that's the setup, we think, but there's a little bit more to it, because a new self-styled presidential assassin who decides to call himself Booth after the first attempted presidential assassin, well, not attempted, the man who assassinated Lincoln, John Wilkes Booth, this guy calls himself Booth. He says, I know about you, Frank. I like you. What happened to you that day in Dallas? Do you really have the guts to take a bullet? Did you actually freeze? Or did you make a decision? My life is just as important as this guy's. I'm not going to get my head split open. So this political thriller, which is more of just a standard, straightforward suspense thriller with action elements and a lot of character development, is a cat and mouse type of a game in the movie. And John Malkovich as Booth, whose real name is Mitch Leary, he's also a government guy, but in his case, he was excommunicated. They felt, I guess, he was too dangerous, and they tried to bump him off, and now he has an axe to grind. His axe to grind is not with either the president or Frank Horrigan. His axe to grind is with the whole machinery that creates people like himself to go around the world committing terrible crimes on behalf of the United States government, while at the same time taking the same kind of a person, skillful, intelligent young man like what Clint's character was. We're going to train this asshole to protect, and we're going to train this asshole to kill. He's not okay with it, and he says, I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory, Frank. Can you stop me? I don't think so. And I understand why. Because life is too precious. And you better be damn sure that that guy you're going to get your head split open for is worth it. And even then, I wouldn't blame you if you still don't take that bullet. So the movie goes forth from there with these two guys who are, if we're being fair, they're not really that much alike. Yes, they're intensely driven, intensely motivated to get to their goal. In this case, Malkovich wants to get a shot at the president. And then you start wondering, well, how's he even going to do that? He doesn't have any connections. Even in early 1990s era, it wasn't necessarily that easy to get anywhere near president, vice president, any scenario where there's Secret Service detail. Good luck. I mean, I remember a number of years ago in Huntington when Bill Clinton was at the book review. This was in 2016. Do you know how many people in the surrounding area, Secret Service agents, knocked on their doors? They were taking no chances. They probably had shooters positioned everywhere in Huntington. They may have had people in helicopters using infrared. In the world of the film, you don't have any idea how John Malkovich's character, Mitch Leary, is going to get close enough to the president. It seems like he's making a lot of empty threats. But there's something behind the words. And then when we learn what this guy actually did, okay, these are not empty threats. As all of this is going on, we get a glimpse of Frank Horrigan's interior life. He had been married. He started drinking too much. And his life, it didn't go down the tubes. That would be a stretch. He's still doing very important work. And as we meet him, Dylan McDermott, a very young Dylan McDermott, plays his partner in the Secret Service. They're not on presidential detail. They're working a counterfeiting situation. And it is an incredible action sequence, which isn't really that much action, but the stakes are sky high, and we're not really sure exactly what's going on. The actor who plays Jigsaw, it's funny, I can't remember his name, but the actor who plays Jigsaw is in this early scene. and this is one of his kind of, I'm sorry, his name is Tobin Bell. For shame, I'm not a fan of the Saw series. But Tobin Bell, we don't realize this till the scene is over, because as it's going on, we don't know what the fuck is happening. Because you have this setup, and I think it's in Florida, but I'm not sure about that. It's, you know what, it can't be in Florida. It's probably near DC, like near the harbor. Clint and Dylan McDermott go to a meet on a boat, some kind of drop-off. And Clint and Dylan McDermott, if we don't know what we're doing and what this movie is, they appear to be counterfeiters. And Tobin Bell plays like a big wig counterfeiter. And he's going to make a deal. But the problem is, Tobin's character is convinced that Dylan is a Secret Service agent. Well, no shit, he is a Secret Service agent. But if we just walk into the movie, we have no idea who Clint Eastwood is at this point. We don't know. So Tobin Bell gives Clint Eastwood a gun. He gives him a gun. Now, Clint can't go along with this. He can't let his partner die. He gives him a gun, and he says, I think maybe you're with this guy. Well, yeah, he is with him. No shit, but Tobin doesn't know this. His character doesn't know. He just knows that Dylan, he was sloppy, and they were able to identify that he was a Secret Service agent. They probably were tailing Clint, and they didn't figure out that he was also a Secret Service agent. Otherwise, they would have just put 2 bullets in both of them when they arrived for the meet. So Dylan McDermott's sitting there with a bag over his head. And Clint, in close-up, Wolfgang Peterson, phenomenal filmmaker, did Das Boot. He later did Air Force One, among others. Tremendous filmmaker. Dylan McDermott's got a bag over his head. He's suffocating to death. And Clint, with 3 decades of movie stardom on his face, from the Dollars trilogy forward, he has a look on his face that you can't teach in film school. You can't teach in an acting class. Some people have it and some people don't. And Clint, whether he was in his 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even in films like The Mule, which really aren't that good, some people have the magic on screen. And Clint, as he holds this gun, we're focused on his face, as I'm sure Tobin Bell's character is. He's supposed to kill his partner. And Clint, as he holds the gun, before turning it onto Dylan McDermott, I didn't catch this the first time through. He does something like this. And what he's doing is, he's figuring out, he knows the model of gun because this is the kind of work he does. He's calculating what are the odds that there is a bullet or more than one bullet in the chamber. He's somewhere between 80 and 85% sure that he's going to pull the trigger and it's going to be an empty chamber. And we don't know any of this because we're not focused on that. You know, the old saying from Catch Me If You Can. Why do the Yankees win? Because the other team can't stop checking out the pinstripes. How does Clint get away with trying to figure out the weight of the gun? Because they're not paying attention to it. They're too busy wondering, is he going to pop his buddy or is it not his buddy? He pulls the trigger. And Tobin Bell is elated because now he knows for sure, okay, he passed the test. So Dylan's character is about 12 seconds from being murdered. And Tobin Bell says, all right, Frank, let's go get some breakfast. Sorry I had to do that, whatever he says. And Clint now he's pissed off. He doesn't like the fact that he had to almost kill his partner. He says, can I just get my gun back? You took my gun when I came in. And Tobin says, no, I'm sorry. Of course, Frank, what am I doing here? Give him back his gun. The instant they give Frank his gun, boom, boom, you're under arrest. And the look on Tobin Bell's face when he realizes, holy shit, how the fuck did he know that gun was empty? Clint's performance is better the second time, and it's going to be better for you now that you know this, because I was blown away by this movie. I saw it opening day with my dad, and I totally missed that, and I guarantee you my father was a big movie fan. This was one of his favorite movies too. He didn't catch that either. And when he and Dylan's character is named Al, they're in the car, and Dylan he's going to have nightmares about this. And the audience is laughing with him because he goes, now, Frank, you knew that the gun was empty, right? And then Clint is honest. He says, there could have been one bullet. There could have been one bullet. It was literally Russian roulette, because I guarantee you, with his knowledge of the gun, there is a version of this where Clint would have been 100% sure there's nothing in there. And maybe they had one bullet in the third chamber, but clearly they did not want him to commit this crime. They were willing to do it on their own, but there wasn't any reason for Clint to kill this guy. So we get this idea so early. He is fearless, because in that situation, any normal human is shitting a brick, and he is cool as ice. And if anything, he's angry. He's angry that he's having to do this and that they've been made, and that presumably his partner fucked up, because they're ready to do this deal and they know the partner he's a fucking Secret Service agent, Frank. So with the cat and mouse in full force, Clint's character, Frank, asks to be transferred back to his first detail. It's a little bit like a Heartbreak Ridge angle where Gunnery Sergeant Tom Highway, coming to the end of the line, asks to be transferred to the platoon which all started it for him, Recon, or in the Marines, a reconnaissance platoon. That's how he wants to close the book on his military career. Frank wants to be on presidential detail because this guy is going to make a try. Please, I've given you guys 3 decades of the best service I gave you everything I had. Can you please do? Yeah. A few strings are pulled and Clint is put on presidential detail. And another big star of the era, still working, Rene Russo, who was a super successful international fashion model who, and this is almost funny, when the big modeling gigs dried up because horror of horrors, she was 32, she stopped getting the big gigs. She said, you know what, fuck this shit. She made the movie Major League. She made the movie Mr. Destiny with Jim Belushi. She did Free Jack. She did Lethal Weapon 2. And on the strength of how fire she is in Lethal Weapon 3, she got in the line of fire. And she is fantastic in this film. She is so good. I believe this is Renee's finest film acting. I like what she does. I love Get Shorty with Travolta, Gene Hackman, Danny DeVito. Love Get Shorty. I like Lethal Weapon 3, and she appeared again in Lethal Weapon 4. The movie Buddy, where she has the chimpanzees and stuff. Ransom with Mel Gibson, great movie also. But what Renee does here, and Carrie Fisher worked on the script. She did a script doctoring because they felt that they could do more with her character. So Renee's character of Lily Raines is a crackerjack Secret Service agent, and she's been on presidential detail for a while. She doesn't like this. This is the opposite, the reverse of Clint Eastwood in The Enforcer in the mid-70s arguing against quotas and like, we don't need this shit. She's initially upset that this fucking dinosaur relic, who she knows who he is, he's a living legend. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. No shit, it's Clint Eastwood. But in the world of the film, Frank Horrigan is a living legend. Not necessarily for the best of reasons. They know that he's had personal problems since Kennedy, and he was on the verge of washing out any number of times, but he had people in high places who had his back. Had his back. A little bit like, Val Kilmer in Top Gun Maverick protecting Tom Cruise at various points in the past that we're led to believe, because that's my guy. You promote me to commander of the Pacific Fleet, and I'm going to support my guy, Pete Mitchell, because he's a great pilot. But you understand, he's had people in high places who had his back. But at a certain point, he's going to run out of people who have his back, and he's going to run out of friends, because he does have this kind of prickly personality. So Frank has to overcome the idea that Lily doesn't like him, and she doesn't think he belongs there. He's too old for presidential detail. He could be a liability. But he slowly finds his way into her heart. And in the hands of any other actors other than this era Clint and this era Renee, the sort of romance angle wouldn't work. But Clint is so sincere, and he slowly gets into her good graces, sometimes being charming, sometimes being obnoxious, as she says. But the development of their friendship and the camaraderie and the bond that develops between them, it works. As I say, I think it's Renee's best film acting. She sells it. She sells the fact that her character in different circumstances is lethal. This is not somebody you would want to make an enemy of. She is absolutely lethal, as she played a similar character who was more just a straight-up fighter in Lethal Weapon 3. From about the halfway point of this film, the tension ramps up to just incredible levels because we start to see how Malkovich, as Mitch Leary, how he is going to be able to take a crack at the president. And as much as Frank is trying to keep up, Booth's just too smart. And Malkovich comes across as a guy who unfortunately did the wrong thing with his whatever government credential. This was a guy whose IQ is off the charts. He could have done anything, and he ended up being an assassin who I guess killed one too many foreign people, even though he was doing what he was told to do, and then suddenly they try to bump him off. Like, really, his backstory is tragic. It doesn't excuse what he does in the film. He is a horrendous, or has become a horrendous human being. But you know that at some point, he was a brilliant, young, idealistic kid, just like Frank Horrigan. And look where we are now. The same government that trained me to kill tried to kill me. The same government that trained you to protect, now you want to kill me. How do you like them apples, Frank? He doesn't say that. Now, I'm not going to go into spoiler territory, but I will say that there's a moment towards the end, and this is a film where it gives you moments to breathe. And this is something that Clint has done in a lot of his better films, where it's not always about advancing the plot A to B to C. Even though Clint didn't direct this, I feel like some of his influence was felt by filmmaker Wolfgang Peterson. And you look at, for example, Air Force One and what he does there. That's a movie that is just doing this, rushing headlong. In the Line of Fire gives us an extraordinary moment that operates on so many levels, I'm going to probably miss a few. So we know that Booth is going to make a try. He's going to try to kill the president. And the entire Secret Service is on it, but they're not going to be able to stop him because they don't know where he's going to be, what he's going to look like. So they can have an entire, and Renee even says this to Clint, you have to have faith in us, but Clint knows it's going to come down to me one way or the other. If I don't figure out where this guy is, he's giving me the clues. They're not going to mean anything to you guys. Here, you want the information? So Clint and Renee are in a hotel room. And Clint's not really on presidential detail anymore. There was issues earlier in the story where he got sick at the wrong time and pissed off Gary Cole, great actor, who gets him removed specifically. Can't fire him, but he doesn't want him on presidential detail. He sees him as a liability. So Clint and Renee know that there is a chance the president is going to die the following day. And they're not judging. They just are trying to do their job, whether they like this guy or don't like this guy. We don't even know the president's name. I thought his last name was Traveler. Everybody keeps talking about Traveler. That's the code name for the president, at least in the world of this film. I don't think that we have any idea. I don't think we ever learn his name. I don't know the actor who plays the president. It's not what the story's about. So this moment in the movie where Clint and Renee are in a hotel room, and it's a gorgeous shot. It's a beautiful shot. It's nighttime, and it's raining. And after an hour and a half plus of the movie, it's probably more like an hour and 40 at this point, Clint finally tells the story of that fateful day in Dallas, where he watched his friend, John F. Kennedy, who was, 43 at the time? 45? He was still, in his 40s. He watched this guy get his head blown apart by gunfire, and he let it happen. And he basically says, I don't know why I didn't react. If I had moved quicker, I could have taken that fatal bullet, and it would have been all right with me. And Clint, of course, had the reputation of being the tough guy, macho, masculine. He's crying in this scene. It wasn't in the script. And Renee was not expecting it, and she starts crying. It is for me, as magical of a movie moment as It's a Hell of a Thing Killing a Man in Unforgiven. This is not a soliloquy, though. He tells a story. It's a totally different kind of story, but it's about another man dying. But the emotion that Clint finds and the way that it resonates and connects and the way that these two characters, either or both, could be dead the next day, the way they hold hands and have this moment, it's extraordinary. It's 30 years of film stardom. And this guy who was never known as a great actor, giving this extraordinary, and we already know this movie is good. We're with the story, and we have no idea how it's going to play out. But this moment, this pause, the calm before the storm, if you will, it's a top 5 all-time movie moment for me. Clint just does such a beautiful job in that scene, not afraid to be vulnerable. So without spoiling it, huge confrontation the next day. Booth does make a try. Clint figures it out, maybe too late, and we go from there. When it's all said and done, we are left invigorated by the tremendous action in this film. And there's a little bit of CGI. It's weird. This is a ground level action film. Yes, there's a lot of stunt work, but there's no green screen in this film. The kind of special effects I'm talking about, I mean, this is almost ridiculous, but we see flashbacks to the day in Dallas, and they blended footage of Clint Eastwood from Dirty Harry, because he was wearing the kind of suit that a Secret Service agent would wear. And Clint looked young enough in Dirty Harry where, okay, I guess this could be 3 decades earlier. We see the Clint from Dirty Harry, literally footage from Dirty Harry, as if he's on presidential detail that day. That's the kind of special effects I'm talking about. That's the kind of modest CGI, if you will, that's in this movie. But there are a lot of action sequences and a lot of incredible stunt work, but all street level, all believable. And when it's over, this is one of those films, I don't know anybody who has seen this movie who does not love it. And I've said that a number of times. It's not by accident. If you're somebody who has, maybe you know Clint Eastwood, this is a movie I'd recommend. People say, I know I'm supposed to know, I know who Clint Eastwood is, but I've never seen one of his films. Give me one Clint Eastwood movie so that I can kind of get the guy. Dirty Harry works, even though it's more than 50 years old. But In the Line of Fire is contemporary enough. Anyone will get why this guy became a star, why he became arguably the greatest, most important single figure who was primarily an actor and then became a director. But he has had the greatest overall career, I would say, in the history of cinema. Not most important, but the greatest overall career when you think in terms of the directing, the acting, and the producing. There's nobody like him. He's a true unicorn. And he's still working. He's editing his final film, Juror Number 2, I think it's Juror Number 2 it's called, as we speak. So yes, In the Line of Fire is free on Tubi. Oh, AMC Plus also. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. I just looked that up. It's on AMC Plus and Tubi. So if you get AMC Plus, you could just watch it without commercials. Tubi, you have to deal with some commercials, but not excessive. And you have the option of the $2 rental on Prime. I much $2, I know it's like a joke, but I still don't like telling people to spend their money. The 15th entry in our continuing series, Most Underrated Film Performances. Clint Eastwood as Secret Service agent Frank Horrigan in what I believe his finest piece of film acting, Wolfgang Peterson's 1993 classic, In the Line of Fire, which I should point out grossed close to $200 million at the box office. This has been episode 170 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for joining me on this late Sunday afternoon here in New York. If you caught this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you caught this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 171 real soon. Until then, peace.